when I did my GCSEs, I'd already been accepted into the army. It pushes you out to try new things. The discipline at that level, at that age, was a game changer. Mark 15 coffee jar grenades, prigs, Mark 16 mortars, Mark 12 mortars, pipe bombs, homemade machine guns. It was a shock. A rogue Afghan policeman inside the patrol base couldn't have weapons outside the embassy compound. Spanish CP team, they got caught with a magazine. He got shot. 3 weeks in, one of our team was kidnapped. They were paranoid the CIA were trying to assassinate the president, so they were arrested for espionage. It just attracted a lot of negativity towards us.
It's just the things I saw there were just different level.
The lines of communication are not effective enough, and these things can happen in the fog of war. That kills me now.
This week on the Debrief then, I have a guy who spent 22 years in the military as a Royal Military Policeman. He's subsequently moved on the circuit. He's done all sorts of bits and pieces, close protection-wise. He's your man. He's the guru of all things CP. Rick Mounfield, how are you, mate? You all right?
I think we have over-egged that a little.
Mate, come on. I'm there for you.
No, I appreciate it. I'm blushing.
Well, listen, I'm going to take it right back to the very beginning, and we're going to talk about you when you was young. What was your upbringing like? Where were you from?
So I grew up in Campion, south side of Newport, in South Wales. I'm English, by the way, so I'm just push that out because
there's no Welsh accent there, is there?
If you're from the South Wales region, you'll pick up on this awful sort of. I know people are going to hate me for this, but South Wales, it's not the beautiful Welsh accent. It's the crossover into Bristol type of accent. But 22 years, 30 years since I left, and
right, okay.
Yeah.
So
but yeah, really... middle class sort of upbringing. It's very straightforward. Not particularly
happy family.
Academic. Yeah. Mum and dad. Brother also followed me into the RMP. He was working on building sites and got fed up of having his lunchbox filled with cement so they can stick his wagon wheel out the top. And I said, why are you bothering with that, Dave? You should join the army. It's a breeze. I go adventure training. I go skiing in the winter. I've been to diving. I've got friends. We go out drinking. I was in Osnabrück at the time. It was living the dream, and then he basically followed me in.
Cool. Were you good at school? Were you a top student? Were you average?
I was average. I think there's the potential was there. Just was lazy. My parents were not academic. My dad was a farmer's son. Mum was a housewife. Nobody was ever suggesting I was ever going to go to university. It was like you finish school. Yeah. And go out and find a job.
And get some work,
I listened to your interview with Bear. Yeah. A lot of comparisons, the way I see it. I left school with 3 GCSEs because I wanted to be a policeman. Yeah. And then they said to me, listen, you're only 16. Why don't you go and join the army, come back when you're 25, and then, see a bit of the world, have a bit of life. And so I did that. So I went to a careers office and said, what can I do? And come out and join the police.
Where did you do your basic training? Let's get you straight into the army. Where did you do your basic training?
Junior leaders. So this is it. At 16, I'd been accepted.
Was that Shorncliffe, was it? At the time?
No, Bovington. So I'm an Armoured Corps. The RMP juniors went to Armoured Corps juniors. So when I did my GCSEs, I'd already been accepted into the army. So what GCSEs are focused on, maths and English and sport. I thought they're the ones the army's going to be interested in. So they're the 3 I got. And that was it. Yeah. So I went to Bovington in 88.
What was that like?
It was... it was a shock.
Yeah.
I was a tubby kid. I came back on my first 6-week leave and everybody was like, what happened? Beasted.
Yeah, proper.
Yeah.
Proper.
Yeah, it was basically what you call college now. It was after GCSE.
How old were you?
16 and a half, nearly 17.
Oh, okay, so boys, so proper boy soldiers.
Boy soldiers,
yeah. Wow.
I still have a WhatsApp group now with all the old boys from those days that I knew at 16, yeah.
So, did you enjoy it?
I did. I think it made me. It changed my perspective. I played football and rugby. I was a sporty kid. Yeah. But the discipline at that level, at that age, was a game changer.
Okay, so that sort of like grounded you, as it were, put you in the right place.
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay, cool. So did you play sport at Depot and all that sort of stuff?
Yeah, I was football. First time I tore my ACL was 16, playing in the Junior Army Cup final at Tidworth.
Wow.
That was an ongoing story.
The
that I still
Tidworth
deal
Bowl,
with.
that's still there. That's still there, that pitch.
Yeah,
isn't
it is. Yeah. So yeah, in rugby, I tried, and swimming. Tried a lot. That's what junior leaders does. It pushes you out to try new things.
Yeah, you get a lot. Yeah, you get because it's training done over a year, so you get all your soldiering stuff done, but you also get exposure to all sorts of other battlefield tours and all sorts of stuff.
And like when you went out adventure training when you were a kid, that set you off. So we went to Rennie Lentley in Dartmoor, and we did escalation. We did 8 mile pulling a Land Rover chassis with a box of bricks on the back. Big teamwork in things that honestly, in the rest of my career, I never did much that was harder than that thing.
Yeah.
Going over tours in Dartmoor. That was, but loads of adventure training at Rennie Lentley. I remember that really fondly.
So you finished there.
Yep.
Are you badged RMP when you finish there? Is that or do you have to go and do some trade training somewhere?
Yeah, so you go to Chichester. That's where it was at the time. Chichester Barracks is now a beautiful housing estate. But you go to Chichester. That's the Military Police Training Centre, and then you do your trade skills. So you join basic recruits, finish phase 1, and then the junior leaders come in at phase 2, and then you go into trade skills and stuff. So I had my 18th birthday at Depot.
And when is it before you actually get to your unit? Because you get promoted before you get there. So you're a lance corporal before you get out the traps, aren't you?
That's true. So when you pass out, then you get allocated to unit. You go as a lance corporal.
Yeah.
The thinking was that you needed that kind of rank to enforce discipline on privates or whatever, it's a boost.
Yeah, you need some form of authority, don't you?
Yeah.
Otherwise, nobody's listening to you, are they?
Yeah. Well, I was 18. They didn't listen anyway. You think about it.
I was going to say, after about 10 pints, I don't care what you said anyway.
I would go. It's a relevant point because I would go to domestic abuse incidents in a married quarter.
Yeah.
As an 18-year-old lance corporal and have to drag out a sergeant major who's 40. Because he's having an argument with his wife, and and they're like,
you've got to try and calm that down.
What the hell do you know? You don't know anything about. I wasn't even in a relationship. I'd never been married. I was 18 years old. That's the position you get put in at that point. But then you have to grow up really quick. I'm
sure you do because some of the sergeant majors, especially back in that sort of area.
Oh yeah,
they were absolute creatures, weren't they? You're just crowbag.
I got sparked out more than once.
You can be a sergeant and you're a crowbag to some of those guys. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Especially the LEs and that. They were some proper creatures about in them days, weren't they? So, where was your first posting? Where did you go? What did you get up to?
I went to Osnabrück, 115 Provost Company in Osnabrück. I arrived there on the...
that's a drinking posting, that, isn't it?
Yeah. Osnatraz. Everybody called it Osnatraz. But actually, we loved it. The old stat there is beautiful. I went back there in 2003 as a sergeant, married. My eldest son was born there. I still love to go back and see it. I have very fond memories there. So I basically served there for 5 years.
But working there, I mean, it must have just been belt-fed blokes downtown, minging.
Broadways. I'll never forget Broadways. Down the Barnoff every Friday night, every Saturday night.
The Barnoff. That just sounds like I never did a Germany tour, but that just sounds like that would have been a large piece of me. Would have been the Barnoff.
Barnoff Strasse. That was. Every weekend you knew you were going to get
everything mayo and a punch up.
Back then, you see, we wore number 2 dress on patrol.
Really?
Yeah, polished shoes. That was a target. Big red cap. That was a target. I went through the stores had just a supply to those for getting stamped on. And number 2 dress, and you got very, very good at stitching the seam that goes down between your shoulder blades.
Because my number 2 dress, you only had to have a bowel movement in it, and the thing split
you get
apart.
Into,
do you know what I mean?
You're going straight into a ruck, and the first thing you grab, it's like split. So then you'd be stitching it back up for the RSM.
I mean, whose decision was that to put you in that sort of clobber to go and deal with people downtown?
Well, you think about it. We had these white webbing belts on with a pistol on this side and a lanyard and a cross strap that was just perfect for pulling you onto it. So as soon as you get out of the car to go and scrap, the first thing that comes off is your cross strap. Your hat goes in the car. Then you have to remember to lock the car so nobody goes in and nicks the stuff out of the car while you're not in it. It was. There were good days. They were good days. But they eventually took us out in number 2 dress, and then we went into jumpers with number 2 dress trousers. Then they let us patrol in berets, and
Yeah.
And nowadays, they're in full MTP, same as everybody else.
Nowadays, isn't it?
Yeah. Common sense applies now.
Yeah. So there is a gentle progression.
Yeah.
Where the old ways have been. You looked at it and gone, no, that's stupid. Isn't it?
Yeah. So
that's a good thing. That's a positive thing.
Well, it is, and we started patrolling in 110 Land Rovers, so a canvas topped, and you'd be like this in number 2 dress with your hat. Every RMP's peak cap was just rubbed off at the top here because it was hitting the canvas because you weren't allowed to drive without your hat on. With a peak like this, it's dangerous.
Yeah.
So you
can't see nothing, but you're all right because you've got your hat on.
And you'd pull up outside a bar or something. You'd go in and do whatever. You're putting people in the back, and when you come out, well, your blue lights would be gone because they're not screwed on. Mate, honestly,
I'm laughing. A, because it's funny, but B, I can just see myself as a soldier thinking how many ways I can get at you when you're out.
You expected it. I once pulled up outside a 4 RTR guard room to drop off 3 lads. We hadn't nicked them. We just give them a lift home because they were about to start causing trouble. So we get them home before they do.
Yeah.
Drop them off at the guard room, walk them in, say, look, these guys are not under arrest, but it's time for them to go to bed. Come back out to the wagon. Blue lights are gone. But it had snowed that night.
Yeah.
And it's about midnight. And the blue lights are gone. We're like, oh, fuck. So I'm going to get in trouble again for losing blue lights. But the thing is, there's like footsteps in the snow all the way to the accommodation. Get to the accommodation door. There's wet footsteps all the way to a door. And then we're just like, knock on the door, stand there and just like this. And the guy's like, oh, okay, there you go.
So there was an element of sort of like you screwing the nut, it sounds like, and not trying to put everybody in jankers or in front of the OC. Do you know what I mean? There was an element to let's just go home, lads, and let's sort it out. Do you think that still applies now?
Yeah, I think military police now is a far more professional. I won't lie. I mean, the whole army is far more professional than it was back in the early 90s. There is no drink culture. As an RSM, back in Old Shot at the end of my time, the RSM when I was a Lance Corporal used to deal with the mess getting trashed constantly. People would be on orders. Yeah,
now you need a 3-star's permission to open it past 11 o'clock.
Well, exactly.
Stupid, don't you?
So
you know what I mean?
The worst thing that happened as an RSM when I first took over in Old Shot back in 2009, and the mess manager came to see me in my office, she's like, "You need to come and see the corporal's mess. This is a disgrace." And I was like, we got some people with character. Let's go see what they were up to.
Hooray!
And I was like, well, you've tidied up. She's like, no, look at this. And there's like a those cooked chickens you get off Tesco's, rotary. So guys had come back, sat in the middle of the dance floor and destroyed this cooked chicken and left the carcass on the floor.
Criminal, absolutely.
That is not something that mess hands.
Somebody needs to hang for that.
You're right. I did a thorough investigation, and we couldn't find any offenders. So I cleaned it up and I put it in the bin. I was like, oh, jeez. So this is the indicator.
There was a definite change, isn't there?
The youth of the army now are super disciplined but more professional because the operational stuff they've been through. To the sergeants now, not the younger ones, but the things they'd been through was way beyond what I'd been through, and arguably. So my first operation was Granby. That's not now how it is.
So let's talk about operations. You said your first one was Granby. How was that? What did you do out there?
So I was
a Donner. So I'd just finished part 1 of my motorbike license, and hadn't done my road bit yet, but I was thrown on one. So I was working within the brigade admin area. We started 7 Brigade. Obviously 115 was 7 Brigade, and then when 4 Brigade reinforced, we were reassigned to 4 Brigade. So with the brigade admin area is 2 miles of support vehicles doing prisoner of war handling. Yeah. When the guards or the infantry lads are finished clearing, they just we'd pull up and they'd be sat in rows, and then we would process, take them up, and then the guards would take them on as the guard force. Yeah. Prisoner sort of handling areas, and we were constantly moving. And we came across bunkers. We would clear the bunkers. I had a sergeant. Pete Cassidy, who retired as a half colonel in the end, and he'd skill at arms instructor. He'd done junior Brecon. Yeah, he was. And I think about it now, he's probably 28 at the time, but I was only 19, and he was a legend. I was glad I was in his section because he looked after us. He taught us what we need to do. We didn't do infantry skills back then. No, they do now.
You suddenly found yourself
Afghan changed
in a position
all of that.
where you needed to have.
So he taught us. I'd done section attacks because I was a junior leader. Most of us, our RMP group, had never done section attacks. So when we have, we picked up a sniper. I know that now because we lifted him with an RPG and a Dragunov. Yeah. but we took him properly. Pete made sure of that because we couldn't trust him. He wasn't a threat, as it turns out. He was a very nice guy.
Yeah.
He'd been in the desert for about 2 years.
Probably glad of a bit of snap and a drink of water.
Exactly. Yeah. So, but that kind of thing was the first exposure to fear for me, taking my training into an environment that was fast, but it was relentless for 4 days, which seems pretty. In the big scheme of things these days, it's nothing. But that was the first time I'd ever been in an operation environment.
Okay, so then, where else did you go after that?
So I went to Northern Ireland. So I did in early.
What was that? Early
90s. So I got there in December 92.
It was sort of like ceasefire on, ceasefire off at that stage.
No. Ceasefire was 94. So,
that's right, yeah.
So I got there patrolling Belfast area for 9 months, and I specialised into weapons intelligence. So I went to the Force Intelligence Unit for the Incident Investigation Company, which had just become that because the book Big Boys Rules had outed JSG, had outed 14 Company, had outed Wiz, so all those had to rebrand. So I joined just as they became Instant Investigation Company. So it's a unit that was formed of ATO, INTCOR, and RMP investigators. We would go out into the 39 Brigade area, so Toonbridge to Portadown, and investigate every murder, shooting, find of weapons, ammunition, explosions.
Because were you getting exposure to good
source,
good, you must have seen some deep.
Yeah,
the IRA were quite good at what they did at the time, weren't they? So some of their improvised stuff, especially, I found it mega interesting what they were doing.
That's what we would go out to patrol to sort of Ballykinler or McGilligan. We would brief the incoming regiments on Mark 15 coffee jar grenades, prigs, Mark 16 mortars, Mark 12 mortars, all of the different
IAGs.
Absolutely, these things were, and even on the Protestant paramilitary side, pipe bombs, homemade machine guns that were being built by parts that were nicked out of the BE factory at Washington.
It's crazy, wasn't it? It's crazy what they could cobble together and actually make quite a good use of.
Yeah. So that's what did that for till after the ceasefire. But when my 2-year point came up, and a lot of my sections, only 12 of us, a lot of them had been posted out. They were losing the skill sets. So I was extended, and then I was extended again, and eventually at 4 years in province, they like you have to go now.
Yeah.
So I left in June 96.
Where'd you go then?
So I went to Catterick. I didn't want to. The thought of going back to being a policeman just filled me with dread. I tried to leave the army to go into haulage with my dad. He had a lorry.
Oh, okay.
So I spoke to my OC, my ATO OC at the time, said, I want an HGV course. And he's like, I'm not giving it you. I was like, why not? Because you're going to take that and you're going to leave. I've heard you in the office. You're going to leave the army. I was like, You're serious? You're not paying for this course, You're ruining my life here.
Cheers,
so
boss.
what? He's like, I'm not doing it. Corporal Mounfield, you go back to your parent unit, bed back in, and if they want to give you a HGV course, then they'll give you one. But I'm not.
Wow,
I'm not giving you a path out. I saw him again about 5 years ago at one of these security trade shows. He retired as a colonel, and I actually thanked him because if I had left at that point, I wouldn't have gone to Catterick. I wouldn't have done my close protection course. I wouldn't have met my wife. I wouldn't have my kids. It's sliding doors.
Yeah, it's fate, isn't it? It's fate. Let's talk about close protection, and let's talk about when you got into close protection. How did you find out about it? What drove you that way?
So when I came from Northern Ireland back to Catterick, I was going off. I hadn't been able to drink for 4 years. Mess life was pretty good, and they basically said, right, you need to go and calm down. So they sent me to Bosnia. When I went to Bosnia, I was attached to a paraprovost staff sergeant from Aldershot. And he just basically took me running around the hills in Banja Luka and said, you need to go back and do something.
Metal factory, wasn't it?
Yeah, the metal factory.
Yeah, I know that place, yeah.
So I came back fitter than I'd ever been.
Yeah.
And then thought, right, I'll give it a crack. So I went to Longmoor, did my close protection course in 97.
How was that?
Passed it. It was probably the hardest.
I did the
hardest
regiment's
thing.
close protection course,
Yeah.
and there was sort of like we didn't do anything with your guys, but we know that your guys sometimes shadowed or come down to sort of stuff that we did, and we'd obviously had guys that probably gone and had a look at what you did.
Well, later on in one of my tours in Baghdad, I had SF guys were attached to my team.
Right. Okay.
For periods of time for facilitating what they needed to do. Go into that too much, but
of course.
The CP course was 13 weeks. It was a lot of range work, a lot of driving, a lot of phys, but only up to week 8, and then it was down to skills. Formations, a lot of exercises and stuff. It was enjoyable. The first 3 or 4 weeks was intense. That's where most people drop off. About 40% pass rate.
Drop off?
Yeah, they just either cream in on the tests. You have a weekly test.
Is there physical tests in it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It's specifically designed by the same people that designed the fitness test for, the fitness test was a 2-mile run into a sit-up bleep test and then onto pull-ups, and then there's a 70-kilo dummy carry over 50 meters, drop the down, load a mag into it, hit simunition rounds on target, 5 have to hit, make it safe, put it back in, pick the dummy up, back 50 meters, down, do your sit-ups again.
Proper good stuff.
Oh yeah, it's hard.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So you did that course, and where did you go with it after that? What was your first posting with that?
So I came back to Catterick in '97. I was meant to go out to Mostar with.
Because there's loads of really cool postings for RMP CP teams, aren't there?
Yeah.
Some really cool postings.
Yeah,
some
off
really
the grid.
obscure places.
So my first tour was. So I was supposed to go to Mostar, but the general I was going to look after had a heart attack and he didn't deploy, so we got stood down. And in '99, I got sent to Democratic Republic of Congo.
Oh, what a place that is!
Kinshasa.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Did you get a medal for that? Did you?
No.
No. So you went all these places. You don't pick up a gong, do you?
No, you don't. No.
But what was
it's
that
not
like as a posting? I've not been there.
So 5-man team, looking after the British ambassador at the embassy in DRC, where with a government that a year before with a rebel army, they'd overthrown it.
That's
lots
right.
of paranoia, lots of boy soldiers, lots of drugs with boy soldiers, and 3 weeks in, one of our team was kidnapped along with 2 of yours. Coming out to do a sort of revision of the NEO-op for the non-combatant evacuation order. We spent like 7 days trying to deal with the government. The ambassador was trying to deal with the government to get their release, but they were arrested for espionage. They were out checking out different places you could land a C-130 or a helicopter, and they got picked up by kids and basically locked up for 7 days and interrogated.
It's no joke, is it? And when you say kids, it is kids as well, isn't it? It's like young kids.
Yeah, and these soldiers are from Katanga region. So Laurent Desire Kabila was the president that had taken over the presidentship, leadership of the country, and it was all corrupt. You know what it's like.
Yeah.
So we were on tenterhooks, couldn't have weapons outside the embassy compound. The Spanish CP team, they got caught with a magazine. He got shot. So it was proper serious. So we were deploying out of the grounds with an ASP, and that was it, and that was a risk.
Wow.
So an armoured vehicle, preempting and avoiding was the key thing, and usually not avoiding a lot of criminality, a lot of murder, Tutsi Hutu sort of stuff
just
going
your
on.
Normal West African
Just your normal West
back
African stuff. But then you had to watch out for the soldiers and the police because they were corrupt. They would rob
everybody's
you.
on the take, isn't they? Everyone's on the take.
Yeah. So it was a fascinating time.
That's a great place to learn your trade if you're in the CP world, isn't it? I mean, you don't get any better than that, do you? You got every permutation of stuff that you're trying to guard against, isn't there?
Yeah. So these 3 guys got PNG'd in the end, persona non grata. They were diplomatically expelled. They had to sign that they were spies, and they were flown out to Harare. And then we just what we did then. It just attracted a lot of negativity towards us. Yeah. They were paranoid the CIA were trying to assassinate the president, and we were associated with that, and so therefore we got drive-bys.
The whole of West Africa is permanently on guard against like military-style coups, aren't they? It's one thing I noticed marauding up and down there for a while. It's insane, isn't it?
Yeah.
They are so paranoid that people, especially round-eyed people, round-eyed white people,
and with tattoos, because in their mind, people with tattoos are mercenaries. Yeah. And I got tattoos, but you had to keep them hidden, because they're like, oh, you're a mercenary, and there were things that.
I mean, even I got arrested in Togo with some body armour. Do you know what I mean? Just carrying body armour, and I had all the paperwork for it, but that paperwork went, and then they were unsure, and they had to make phone calls with my sat phone back. And I got bunged in a container, like, do you know what I mean? It was insane.
Well, it's worrying, and obviously if you're on your own, because we're a 5-man team, we didn't have any. There's no QRF,
backup,
there's no military backup.
Yeah.
You're on your own, and that's the troubling thing. When you're going out into the interior, you're going to go up to Mbujimai mines. You could disappear there, and no one would ever know what happened.
Public feeling can change in a heartbeat in West Africa, can't it? Do you know what I mean? It's like one second you drive out in the morning and you're fine, and by the time you got back in the afternoon, someone's been hit by a car or something, and you're like, it's your fault, and it's like, and it wasn't my fault, but it is now because it's white man's juju. It must be your fault, isn't it?
Well, I'm not joking, but that happened to me with our own guard force. They opening the 2 gates for me to take the armoured 110 out, and the gate started to close and he jumped to go and catch it. And I wasn't even in gear. I was just free rolling. And I bumped him with the corner. And I got out and I was like, you okay? He's like, yeah, no problem, chef, no problem. And then the next day he came to work. He was black and blue, like across his back, his legs, his stomach. Somebody had taken a bar to him and then sent him back to the embassy, say he got run over. So I had to go in and say, no, look, listen, I was at that gate. There's no way you could have got the speed up. And plus, if I hit him in the front, which I did, how's he got welts across his back? So 2 years down the line, I'm going back to do my tour for Baghdad, and they called me in. They're like, oh, that case that was going on in Kinshasa about you running that guy over. I was like, did not run anybody over.
Let's get this
they
right
paid him out.
now.
I was like, you're joking. They never paid him out.
How much did he get? Do you know what has he got?
A sewing machine. They have this program for making clothes out of cloth sacks. They gave him a sewing machine and he went away.
Do you know what the thing is? Probably if he'd have just asked for the sewing machine, he'd have saved himself a shoe.
I'd give him a sewing machine, even if we didn't run him over,
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That's incredible. So, other tours that you did in where else did you go? Did you
so
go
I went
West
to
Africa? Did you?
Mostly, North Africa. So I went to Algeria. Was the two at first. So it was a 2IC because I did my course quite late on. Because I was never fit enough before. So I pre-selected, I hit my sergeant, and then my first tour was as a 2IC. So then my next tour as a 2IC was to Algeria in 2002, 2003. That was fascinating. I love that place. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
Lethal place.
Oh, yeah.
You know,
yeah,
but
there's an undercurrent of sort of like Islamic terrorism there. There's an undercurrent of their own local problems. It's all going on.
And again,
there.
another dictator leader, in Bouteflika at the time. And he, we had a much better, that was suits. That was more suits. It was more, it's not that far away really, Algeria, North Africa coast. And we travelled a lot to Iran and over to, so I went to Tamanrasset and I've been over to Tindouf. And Tindouf was just a mud hut town on the Moroccan border, and the people, the Sahrawi people, are refugees from Morocco, and they've been there 25 years, and the Algerians hate them, and they get a lot of grief. But I still have this necklace they presented to me and the ambassador. We flew on our own in a little 2-prop thing, landed on a desert runway, travelled out by 2 hours by road, by dirt road, got to this place where they'd put a big marquee tent up for us because they're getting aid, and then treated like royalty. And I'm the bodyguard. I'm not part of the entourage, but they treat you all the same. I got this necklace that's made from sand coral. There's nowhere near the sea, but where lightning strikes the sand, it solidifies into glass, and then they make necklaces out of this stuff. And I've still got this. One of the most beautiful things. The ironic thing is, I thought, we'll get some local produce out here and wonder what we're going to eat. It'll be like goat stew or something. But no, they'd gone to the effort of bringing us in a crate of Coke, chicken nuggets and fries because they think that's what we would want to eat. The fries were cold, the nuggets were awful, and the Coke was hot, but you couldn't not eat it. And I was thinking, no.
Yeah, major insult if you don't eat, especially if they've gone through all that effort to bring it out there as well.
So those are the things I think my military career and the close protection pathway allowed me to go and see places like Algeria, like Congo, like Tindouf and Tamanrasset. These are places you can't go, generally speaking, but I feel privileged to have had that.
Yeah, I was going to say, and it's something, a consideration for young people joining who do want to do the travel. If I hadn't have been in the regiment, I'd have probably done Northern Ireland and Northern Ireland. Do you know what I mean? That was one trip to Kenya.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And that was about it. So, in those days, when you think about places you went.
Yeah, God, yeah. No, and I hope one day things calm down enough that I can, travel there again with my family. I would love to go to Baghdad and show them that. I'd love to see that happen in the near future.
I'd love to go back there. There's some amazing places. You went to Afghanistan, Bamiyan. The big lakes up on there, they're just beautiful places. Genghis Khan's castles and stuff. And you're like, wow.
This is history, isn't it?
And you can't go there.
I think I appreciate that now more at my age. I'm in my 50s now, and you think back on these things fondly, but you realise that it was a privilege to be able to go and see it.
So, your final posting. What was your final posting?
So I finished. I came back from Sudan. In 2009, went to 160.
North or South Sudan?
Well, both based in Khartoum, but travelling to Juba weekly
Yeah,
or
yeah, yeah, yeah.
monthly.
Crazy the difference in between Khartoum and Juba, isn't it?
Oh, yeah, well, yeah,
It's
yeah.
just poles apart,
Yeah,
isn't it?
oh, God, I could go on about that. I mean, that whole...
Yeah, I
that
worked on
whole
the White Nile for a couple of years,
Yeah,
which was
okay.
just insane. It's just the things I saw there were just different level.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah,
someone tried to sell me a hippo leg once. Do you know what I mean? It's like a hippo leg. I could smell it before
everybody
it got
should.
there.
Everybody should have a hippo leg, though. I love a bit of hippo leg.
Yeah, keep it in the freezer, mate.
Yeah. You need a big freezer, though, wouldn't you? You need a chest freezer, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, came back in 2009. That was my last CP tour, and then took over as the RSM in Aldershot. Obviously, this is post-airborne days, but, you know, it's still an active garrison.
Yeah.
It was interesting.
Was that a bit of a come down? Because obviously, when you've done that CP stuff, I'm presuming within your world, that's sort of like that's the grail, isn't it? That's the best thing to be doing as far as you were concerned.
Yeah, for me. But then there's others that you know within the military police. They say generally you're either a big M or a little and a little P, or a little M and a big P. So, you know, more policing focused and less military. There's your special investigations branch that doesn't exist anymore. Yeah. But the pure investigators, the people that have got those mindsets, that's great, and we all need that. That's the serious policing.
They're the big
CID level.
Yeah, okay.
Dealing with all the horrible things that sort of CID level.
Do you know what? There is some honking stuff as well, isn't there? I wouldn't want to investigate some of it.
No.
But I remember a couple of lads from the battalion went overnight, and you found out afterwards there'd been some really disgusting crimes involved. Like, you know what I mean?
I work, and with the business and optimal risk where I work now, bearing in mind that the owner of the business is Para Reg Falklands veteran, Mike O'Neill, employs 4 RMP. You know, 2 from the GPD CPE side, although Charlie is learning development, but 2 SIB guys, analytical minds beyond what I'm capable of. But that's what they found exciting. So for me, yes, the CP pathway was the natural path. Yeah. But plenty of people just stay within general police duties. So I went back to general police duties
as an RSM.
RSM.
Yeah.
Though I was meant to go to Colchester, and 3 weeks before I came back off tour, they're like, there's discipline issues going on in Aldershot, and we want you to go to Aldershot. I was like, oh, come on. I want to go to Colchester. I'd never been to Colchester. It was the one garrison in my entire 22 years. I'd never even been there.
I did Colchester.
I would love to have gone there.
Colchester's a great town.
Yeah, lovely. Yeah, but I went to Aldershot. And again, that was the,
back to the shop.
Slide indoors, and everything happens for a reason.
Yeah.
That was the best place. Because now I've settled there and I'm commuting. So I get back to Aldershot, arrive post-op tour leave. I start in August, but the company, the regiment's heading to Herrick 11. So they're in pre-deployment training. So I get about 3 months to October when I get to know the corporals, the junior NCOs and the sergeants, and and those that are deploying, and I'm 2IC of the rear party because I'm in Harmony guidelines. I can't deploy, but those guys are going, and that was an interesting time because then I'm the guy that's getting left behind, and I was never the guy that's getting left behind. But my wife's quite happy.
That must be a real sort of like a real.
It is. And I'd never done Afghan, and I never did Afghanistan because during Afghanistan times I was doing CP tours in Algeria and Baghdad and Sudan and stuff, but I never actually went to Afghanistan. But those guys went out, so they flew out in October, and by the 5th of January, 4 of them had been killed. So 4 repatriations, 4 military funerals.
And obviously, as RSM, you're in the thick of that sort of stuff. It's not a nice process, is it? And obviously, families have to be informed and all that sort of stuff.
We'd done, you do the training. I'd see the Garrison Sergeant Major was a good friend. We had drill done with coffins, different people. Bear in mind that most of the guys that were deployed, their friend had been killed. Yeah. And they're in patrol bases with infantry units. RMP now in Afghan, there were 2 of them in every patrol base doing infantry stuff, but then doing forensic exploitation and prisoner war handling, whatever. Yeah. So those guys were going to come back at the end of 6 months, which was 4 months later than the last death, having not even had chance to grieve yet. So there's going to be big welfare issues afterwards. And so, but the first 2 were killed along with 4 others, including the Coldstream Guards, RSM, rogue Afghan policeman inside the patrol base, which is just you can't get your head around it.
Just clacked off.
So 2 of ours are killed in that, and then one of my sergeants killed was with the brigade recce force. He was straightforward shot. Sort of you accept when you go out, and that was a shock within 3 weeks of just burying 2, 3 weeks later, you get another one. And then we had a blue on blue, which was the hardest. So we had a lance corporal attached to light infantry, was all prepped to transfer. You know, he was smashing it. He was the best gunner in his section. He was a real asset. And this is his section commander telling me this after the fact. But yeah, they were laying up an ambush for a mine laying team. And then across one of the operational borders, there's a different battle group's got a sniper on the hill. 2 battle groups not talking to each other. This is all in come out of the public inquiry, so it's not this is not giving away anything, official secrets or anything. But the guys on the ground had moved position because they couldn't see the bend where they knew it was going in. The ICOM chatter had said it was going on this specific bottleneck, so they moved. Team on the hill didn't get that info. So they're seeing a thermal image and they're like, I see the ID team. And so sniper calls in his boss, says, I see the team. Boss says, fire 1 round. Let's see. That'll scatter them. So they put 1 round down. Nobody moved. But corporal commander on the ground says, well, contact 1 round. This is not normal TTPs. Can we just check no one's firing blue on blue here? Nope, we got nothing, no assets in the area. So he's like, right, okay. They fire a second, like they're not moving. Fire another one over the head. He's guy on the ground's like, they're definitely, this is warning shots. Can you confirm? Nothing. So he says, right, Pritch. He says, my guy, get a IR Siloom out. Let's hang it off this tree here so they can see that we're friendly forces. Now, if he'd have snapped it and then hung it, probably would have twigged, but at the same time they're so right, you have let loose. So he's hanging it on the tree. They think he's laying a line.
Oh.
Before he could snap it, was shot under the arm.
Oh.
The guys go down to give him first aid, giving a contact report, and then the section commander gets hit and his rear plate thankfully didn't penetrate. And yeah, it was a tragic thing.
Yeah,
and hard.
Did that cause a lot of hard feeling on the ground as well, did it? Or was it sort of like accepted that this is a genuine mistake and there was nothing could be done about it?
I can't comment for the guys on the ground. I think it's a hard lesson. We've had these lessons before. The RMP have had this lesson in Al-Majar, Al-Kabir, with the 6 that were killed there.
That was terrible.
The lines of communication are not effective enough.
Yeah.
And these things can happen, in the fog of war. But for me, other than dealing with Pritch's family, which is the hardest thing around a funeral and what their wishes are and their demands and their anger, the poor lad on the hill that pulled the trigger, he's only doing what he was told. He had no idea, but how he's getting on now, that I feel for him.
Absolutely, yeah. No, terrible for him. So that was sort of like that really must have been sort of like the low point of that particular post in probably your career, really, I'd have thought.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I had lots. I had friends in Al-Majar. They were friends of mine that were killed then, but I wasn't directly involved with it. I'd had one of my corporals when I was in Iraq on General Lamb's team in Baghdad. One of my guys that was down in Basra had been shot and killed through a snatch. So I went down to the repatriation on that side for him. But this is the first time I had to deal with organising a bearer party, coming out the back of a C-17, dealing with kids when I'm stood with the colonel, and especially with the Coldstream Guards family. The little boy, that kills me now. Having kids myself at the same age, that was the hardest. That was the hardest thing. But then what it did in a positive side, the community, all the old boys, the RMP Association, they wrap around it. They're great for listening. And so when the regiment came back in the April, and everybody's now first time they're seeing their friends again and having the chance to grieve, really.
Yeah.
That's when they'll bring the old boys in and they listen really intently, and it brought the youth and the old boys that have done sort of Aden and these sort of places that, brought them closer together. And if there's ever a positive, then I think that's the thing that came out of it.
That is, and I always say there's a positive to be had, no matter what it is in life. There's always a positive somewhere. So, when did you actually go? I'm going to pop smoke. I've had enough of this.
Well, I was going through commissioning, actually, because I was like, there's nothing I want to do on the outside. So I wanted to go commission. I think I had a fairly good shout. I was G4 qualified, CP qualified, I was investigations qualified, hit the buttons.
RSM?
I was RSM. Well, only RSMs in the RMP can commission at that time. Right. So, I was up against probably 2 other people for one place. I had a fairly good chance. But while I was going through the commissioning process, and I've been through my brigade commander, I got a call from Close Protection Unit saying, you need to go back out to Baghdad, to the embassy this time. Yeah. I was like, well, I've literally been back 1 year. So they hit the Harmony guidelines and you're gone again. The short team leaders at the time. So I thought, geez, I am signing my family up for a life of this. I was at 1 RSM in a 400. You become an LE captain, you're one of 6, and it's Bakshi, and you're going to be target, fair game for everything. Yeah. And I thought, I can't put him through it. My wife, I'd been married 12 years, and at that time I had an 8-year-old and a 3-year-old. I'd been away 3 times in my 8-year-old's life. I missed his entire pregnancy in Algeria. I left when my second son was 6 weeks old, so I left my wife with a St. Bernard, a 5-year-old and a newborn, a 4-year-old and a newborn. She'd been through the mill. Yeah,
they need a bit of time eventually, don't they?
They do, yeah. And I thought, right, I got to put roots down, take my pension, and just call it quits there. So I left, came out into the UK sort of security scene. I didn't do the hostile stuff. I just leave the army because I don't want to keep going away on tours
and then spend 6 months on a ship or out in the desert. Or, yeah.
So I did then.
All corporate-based stuff.
Yeah, well, I did a master's degree, and this is where I see similarities with your story, because you left school with very few qualifications, as I did, and then you wrote a book, which I think I'm in awe of people that write books, because the amount of work goes into that is phenomenal. And so I did my master's degree at Loughborough in security and risk management, and then. I thought, well, I'll go into a corporate role. When I left the army, they do your resettlement. They say, give you a survey, you tick the different things, what motivates you. And basically, the job I was looking for apparently was something that had regular income with regular hours. That I was looking at another army job, basically. But what I ended up doing was consultancy, and I realised that actually I'm an entrepreneur. When I relay that back to an overlay on now with what I know on my army career, every promotion I was seeking was giving me more autonomy, less people could tell me what to do. And that was my driving factor. And so...
was to end up the Grand Fromage.
Right, yeah, the Grand Fromage.
I'll be the boss around here.
Because you can control, you have an impact over people's lives, but unless people have an impact over your life, you can do more what you want. And that's an entrepreneurial spirit, you know that. So, I went to consultancy and started working with, mostly with wealthy families.
Okay.
UK. I deployed to nowhere more hostile than Gaza, because they were interested in going down there. So, Israel was about as hard as it got from there on.
I mean, Gaza's not it's a cheeky place, Gaza.
Yeah. But in and out, shells was probably the biggest threat. That was it. But, other than that, I went to the Bahamas and Provence. It's, that was more... Yeah, I prefer that now. My knees can't take it.
Yeah, no, mate. It does everybody eventually. So what are you doing right now? What's your gig now? And what do you want? Where do you want to end up?
I guess it's just taking time as it comes up. So I'm Optimal Risk Group now. So I'm a group director. There's 3 businesses. One does consultancy, so I'm still working with the private clients. But I have clients that are in critical national infrastructure. So like water boards, gas boards. Different sort of critical national infrastructure.
And this is presumably where the degree pays off, because that's sort of like that. You might as well be speaking in double Dutch to me now.
Right. Okay. So think critical national infrastructure. Exactly. Yeah. Everything that keeps the lights on. Yeah. Gas, water, electricity. That they have, serious risk. They have a very low tolerance of risk. Yeah. So we look at what the risks are, the threats. We look at what the vulnerabilities they have in their business, and then we basically match those 2 things up and then reduce the vulnerability. You can't remove the risk. You can if you just stop doing that thing. But, if you're a business, you don't want to stop doing that thing. Right. You just got to make it to a point where they can accept that risk. It's within their appetite. Okay. And that's what we do. Private clients is different because they don't want to be nailed down. If you've got a 10, 50 million pound house and you live on a yacht and you travel in the world, you don't want to live in a prison, so they have a very high threshold for risk to live a normal life, but they're a target mostly for organised crime or fixated persons, whatever. So it's very different. So I like the balance of that. So 40% of my time is working with those sort of different clients, and 60% is growing the business. Marketing the business, resourcing the good staff, the skill sets we need to keep it going and cope with the growth. So we have an environmental enforcement business, so we put in covert surveillance on prolific fly tipping sites for local authorities, and
that must be quite interesting.
And we capture them. Yeah, we capture them doing the act, and then issue
you capture
fines.
a lot more than just people fly tipping, and all.
Oh, I don't know whether we got an R rating on this, but
I can imagine. You don't need to go there. We know. I'm just trying to think where I've been with the last. No, I'm joking.
You look familiar, I've got to say. Yeah.
Oh, dear.
So that's the one business. We have a training business which does a lot of specialist things. So, and one of the best things is the penetration testing. So this was new to me. I only qualified last October, but blagging your way into a business using social engineering, sort of minor CMOE type of activity. But generally speaking, building up a profile through open source intelligence, looking at what they do, where their operations are, doing close target recce's, surveillance on the place that you find the vulnerabilities, and then going in there and lying your arse off to get into that, to see how a criminal could get in, then giving them a report, say, well, this is how we got in.
And this is what we did. And this is what we
got.
And
then they can patch it. Same as that ethical hacking, but of a building or a business.
That must be good fun. That must be quite a good laugh, because it's like you're pitching yourself against people all the time.
I would do it for free. It's so much fun. Yeah. But some of the sites we do, is a big high security sites, and you have to deal with it. So generally, the lead for the security and the CEO will know you're doing it. No one else knows it's an exercise. Yeah. So they behave as they would. And we've hit high security sites as Just Stop Oil, where we put a guy out to shake a fence, and then we came through the front gate and just run amok. And this is a real life scenario. This would really happen.
Yeah.
Now
we used to
it couldn't happen.
We used to do a fence climbing thing. We
regiment.
We used to pitch up and go and climb fences. And some of the stories they would say, and exactly that, they'd rattle it every day for a week. Do you know what I mean? Yep. And eventually people would stop turning up to it. Yeah. So you just cut straight through it, and nobody would. And stuff like that it fascinates me. Yeah. It is so much fun.
It is a lot of fun. Yeah. So that and then I don't run the close protection side now. Jackie Davis runs the close protection side. She's a legend in the industry, ex-police and Europol, but she wrote the book The Circuit because she was one of the first and only females in sort of 80s, early 90s on the circuit. Yeah. And that book became a Netflix film called Close, and it's now being made into a 7-part Netflix drama. So Jackie runs our teams globally, the teams that are out traveling the world. At the same time, she's working as an advisor with Netflix to get this series up and running. So this is really good.
That's a result, isn't it?
Yeah, and having somebody like Jackie with her it's different. She didn't go through the military CP side, but she is so well known and respected, and she gives a lot back to the community. So a lot with female security officers, CPOs in the industry, they come to her. She's the matriarch.
Female security, there never seems to be enough. And attracting girls into the industry, so she must be doing wonders for that, which is great.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean that's one of the big things that we do promote is trying to change the diversity in the sector. So younger people, and for 5 years I ran the Security Institute. I was the chief exec of the Security Institute, which is the professional body, the largest professional membership body for security. And one of the main things we're trying to do is change the dynamic, because they say the security industry is grey, male, pale, and stale. Because it's full of ex-cops, ex-military, in their 50s, usually white men. And it's true. And there's a place for us, right? Absolutely. Because the crunchy stuff, there's always stuff that needs to be done in crisis management. But when you have a team that's deciding what the threats are and how you fix vulnerabilities, having different perspectives based on culture and upbringing is important to build a high-functioning team, and we promote that.
If you look at the armed forces in general, females are doing more. There's more females. There's females in the infantry now. Do you know what I mean? It won't be long before there's a special forces operator, if there's not already. Do you know what I mean? So that sort of stuff will happen, and the industry that will reflect, that will resonate, because when it usually goes in the military first, and then resonates into the civvy arena anyway. So
that's right. Yeah,
I think you will see it. So what's in the future for you? What do you think? Or are you just going to crack on doing what you're doing? There's a book in you. There's a book in you, I reckon. You say, funny you should mention that, because I think there's a book in you somewhere.
Yeah, I don't think I've got the self-discipline to sit down and do it, but maybe I'll talk to you about it.
Ghostwriter.
Right. Okay. Well, that's appealing. I'm now. My plan is to stick with optimal risk. I'm 52 now. This business has been going for 20-something years. Mike is 66. He wants to gradually slow it down. So, I'll eventually assume the sort of reins here, but building the capability of that business, it's already one of the most well-respected.
And it sounds like you're enjoying
businesses.
it. So, I mean, if you're enjoying it, why fix it if it ain't obviously broken, is it?
My week goes Sunday, Wednesday, Friday. I'm like, sit down and go, where's this week gone again? Everything's very different. So, building the capability and building the business, the brand, the reputation of it, I think is really what I'm focused on now. But, I don't want to retire really, really late. I just want to keep ticking over. And
no, you need it. You need a bit, because you don't know how much you've got left, do you? Do you know what I mean? So you do need a little bit of time to yourself at some stage of the campaign, don't you?
Yeah.
Listen, it's been fascinating talking to you. We'd love to have you on again at some stage, and I do reckon there's a book in there, so I'd love to see you writing that book.
Rob,
all right?
I'll send it to you for proofreading. You write the forward for it, right?
I'll write you a forward. Yeah, deal. All right. Hopefully
brilliant.
we'll see you again. Thanks for coming.
Appreciate it.
Nice one.
Thank you.